It's a hot summer evening in Paris. A record-breaking heat wave has been gripping the city for weeks, leaving the streets empty and the Louvre quieter than ever. No one dares to step outside, except for one man who decides it's time to act. That night, he pulls off one of the most famous heists in history, stealing the Mona Lisa from the Louvre and vanishing into the city. This sparks a worldwide investigation, sending French police on a 2-year journey filled with false leads and famous arrests. Eventually, a mysterious letter reveals the thief's identity. We recreated the entire event to show you how a single man stole the Mona Lisa, nearly escaped with it, and the detailed plan behind a heist that was uncovered decades later. As the sun set that Sunday evening, the last few tourists were leaving the Louvre. Just before it closed, a man entered the museum, dressed in the Louvre's official white uniform. Blending in as an employee, he quickly made his way to a small storage closet, squeezed inside, and waited through the night. The museum was closed the next day, so only a few employees were around to patrol the building. At exactly 7:15 the next morning, the thief emerged into an almost empty Louvre. With no one in sight, he hurried into the Salon Care, where the Mona Lisa was displayed. At that time, the Mona Lisa didn't have its own room, and it wasn't as famous as it is today. But the thief was about to change that. Without anyone noticing, he took the painting off its metal pins and carried it to a nearby stairwell. Using a screwdriver, he managed to remove the painting from its protective frame, then covered it with a white sheet and headed toward the nearest exit. However, as he reached the door, it was locked. At that moment, a plumber working at the museum appeared. He mistook the man for an employee and helped him open the door. Just like that, the thief disappeared into the city with the Mona Lisa under his arm. The heist was over in just minutes, but it took 28 hours before anyone noticed the painting was missing. That week, photographers were going to the museum, officially photographing the paintings, so empty spaces on the walls were expected. But when the photographers arrived the next morning and found the Mona Lisa gone, it became clear something was wrong. The painting was officially missing. The police were called, and a team of detectives arrived at the museum. France closed its borders and stationed tanks around the Louvre. Just kidding, these tanks weren't actually used, but they could be in War Thunder, an epic military action game you can play for free. War Thunder lets you engage in dynamic battles using land, sea, and air vehicles from throughout the 20th century. The game recreates intense, large-scale battles with tanks, aircraft, helicopters, and ships. The latest Storm Warning update supports ray tracing and adds new vehicles and maps. In War Thunder, you can break the front lines in a tank, provide air support with a helicopter, or dogfight high above the battlefield. Download War Thunder for free on PC, PlayStation, or Xbox by using the link in the description. All new players, or those who haven't played in 6 months, will receive special bonuses. You can also play War Thunder Mobile on iOS or Android. Just download it for free from the App Store. When the Louvre announced the disappearance of one of its most valuable treasures, the world was shocked. The big question was, where had it gone? The police only found a wooden frame and a fingerprint left by the thief. To help the investigation, local newspapers offered a $250,000 reward for any information that would lead to the painting. The response was overwhelming, with thousands of letters and people showing up at police stations with tips placing the Mona Lisa all over the world. 2 witnesses claimed to have seen a man leaving the Louvre carrying a large object, but their descriptions of the man were different. One witness thought the painting was on a freight train heading to Belgium, while another believed it was on a ship sailing for America. But one of the most promising suspects was the famous artist Pablo Picasso. A secretary who knew Picasso sent a letter to the police admitting that he had stolen several Iberian statues from the Louvre and sold them to Picasso, who later used them in one of his paintings. This seemed unlikely, but after checking the statue serial numbers, the Louvre confirmed they were from the museum. Picasso was arrested and questioned. At the same time, the police focused on another famous suspect, American banker and art collector J.P. Morgan. Art forgery was widespread, and many paintings were being copied and sold to unsuspecting millionaires in America. A theory suggested Morgan had ordered a heist and that the painting was on its way to him. Police in New York searched a boat arriving from Europe, But the Mona Lisa wasn't found. For 2 years, theories poured in from around the world, but the Mona Lisa's location remained a mystery. In reality, the painting hadn't traveled far at all. It was sitting in an apartment just 2 miles from the Louvre. This apartment belonged to Vincenzo Peruggia, a 29-year-old Italian who had once worked as a handyman at the Louvre. He knew the museum inside and out, including when it was closed and the photographer's schedule. He had even built the protective case of the Mona Lisa, which he easily dismantled during the heist. After taking the painting, Peruggia hid it in a trunk with a false bottom he had made himself. Amazingly, Peruggia had a criminal record, and his fingerprint were in the system, but only his right hand was on file. The fingerprint on the frame was from his left hand, so it didn't match. The police visited his apartment twice, but never found the painting. The Mona Lisa was hiding right under their noses. Peruggia had pulled off a surprisingly simple heist, and it seemed he might get away with it. But after 2 years of holding the painting, he grew impatient. He sent an anonymous letter to an art dealer in Florence, claiming he had the Mona Lisa and wanted to return it to its rightful home. He signed the letter Leonardo and took the next train to Florence. The art dealer and his associate agreed to meet Peruggia at his hotel to verify the painting. After locking the doors, Peruggia opened the trunk, and to their surprise, it was indeed the Mona Lisa. The dealers took the painting to their studio to authenticate it and promised Peruggia a reward for returning it to Italy. But just an hour later, the police arrived and arrested him. Peruggia spent just 7 months in prison before dying 10 years later. The search for the Mona Lisa was over, but the true story behind the heist was not fully known until 1932. In that year, Carl Decker wrote a story revealing a more complicated plan behind the theft. Decker claimed that Eduardo de Valfierno, an art forger, had masterminded the heist. He wanted to sell 6 perfect copies of the Mona Lisa to 6 rich American buyers. He had hired a talented French artist to create the copies and ship them to America. The real Mona Lisa had to be stolen to make the copies seem authentic. Peruggia was hired to take the original. When the news spread that the Mona Lisa had been stolen, the copies were sold to the buyers, and the 3 conspirators made the equivalent of $90 million.